Okay. Yeah, so I'm just gonna mute everybody. Spotlight myself. Okay. Yep. So we've got a kind of blues in A, and hopefully everyone here kind of knows the blues scale. If not, I'm just going to run through it for a couple of minutes. The A blues scale. In fact, can I just get? I can see everyone. Does anyone not know the blues scale in A? Okay, that's fine. Okay, we'll run through it then. Okay. So if you know the A pentatonic, the A minor pentatonic, which goes, that's an A note there. If you play an A7, there's your A, and it just goes 5 8 5 7 5 7 5 7 5 8 5 8. So I'll say that slowly. 5 8. And then you've got 3 strings that are 5 7 5 7. So a nice little box of 5 7s there. And then on the top 2 strings, it's 5 8 again. 5 8. So if you just go up and down that scale, kind of get it comfortable. It's a pattern that's definitely worth memorizing, because wherever you start with the root note, say you start on the 5th fret, then that's the A minor pentatonic scale. It's not actually the blues scale, but it's the minor pentatonic scale. Because you start on the 5th fret on an A. If you were to start, say, on the 8th fret, do the same pattern. So you've got a gap of 3 frets, then a gap of 2, gap of 2, gap of 2, gap of 3, gap of 3. Because you're starting on the 8th fret, suddenly you're in C. It's C minor pentatonic. So this note here, the first note that you start on, is called the root note of the chord, or the root note of the scale. So that dictates what scale you're playing. So that's the C minor pentatonic, because the root note is a C. But we're in A. So back down to the 5th fret. I'll just run through that scale one more time. It goes 5 8, 5 7, 5 7, 5 7, 5 8, and then 5 8. And the idea with the scale is you want to make it sound bluesy. So you've got 8 5. You could go 8 5 and then back. 8th on the B string and then back up. A little lick to kind of talk about string skipping, where you skip a string, is you could do that first lick that I just played, which was which is 8 5 8 on the B, and then back to 5 on the top E. So yeah, one more time. Then skip the B string and go straight to the G and bend. So you're going 7 5 7 on the D, and that of course course, is another root note. That's an A. It's just an octave higher. So you're ending on the root. Okay, so now I'm just going to show you the blues scale, which is almost identical. There's just one extra note. So if we look at the minor pentatonic, again, it goes 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7. And when you get to there, that's the whole scale. That's the root again. That's your A. That's why it's called the pentatonic, because pent means 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. So there are only 5 notes in the scale, and then it just repeats as the octaves go up. So the blue note, the blues scale, it just has an extra note. So we'll look at that bottom part of the scale, the 1 octave. The blue note in that section, 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, is the 6th fret of the A. So you have to add in that note there, which is 5, 8, 5, 6, 7, 5, 7. So we're adding the 6th fret there. It carries on up the scale, which we know normally would go would go 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5. But here we need to add in the note on the G string on the 8th fret. And notice I'm using my pinky there. I tend to use a finger per fret for this scale. So because it covers 4 frets, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. So if you watch my fingers, if you don't do this, it's worth spending 5 minutes on your own just getting the fingering sorted out. Okay. So I'm going to move on. Of course, you can watch this video back if you need to. It'll be in the archive later today. In fact, it'll be in the blues library under under the blues course section that is right at the top of the menus. So, right. If you look at the sheet, it's kind of funny actually, because these chords are really nice. And when I'm saying blues, this is a jazz blues progression. And I know people are like, well, I don't want to play jazz, but actually, Ray Charles, he was in the Blues Brothers. Ray Charles was one of the greatest blues players of all time, and his blues was, he did add in some kind of jazzier notes, but he was a blues musician, completely a blues player. You know, jazz musicians would listen to him and say, well, he plays the blues. So today we're going to look at a slightly jazzier notes in the blues and how to play them. I'm just looking for the sheet myself. And it's quite funny actually, because I did my thumb last week, on Saturday, I was just writing the sheet out, and so I avoided playing chords that used my thumb. So there's some really nice chords here, and there's no bar chords. So I don't think Hein's in the listening, but I know Hein would appreciate that. There are no bar chords in this lesson. So the first chord is an A7. You could play it like this if you want to. There's an A7. That's fine. But I really recommend trying to play it up here. And I was watching an interview with a guitar player a few days ago, and he was saying that often more beginner players, they get freaked out coming up the neck, and they think this part of the neck is for more advanced players. But actually, he said, you know, no, you can start up here. You could be new to everything and be up here. It's exactly the same as being down here. The whole neck is available. So don't, you know, I really recommend learning these chords and thinking of the fretboard as one, and you can go anywhere at any time. You don't have to be limited to these chords down here. It's not more difficult up here, actually. Really, you've just got to learn the shapes. So the A7, the normal A7, the way it's often played is using that first shape. So if you get your second finger and put it on the bass string at 5th fret, that's your A note there. Again, we're using the root note at the bottom of the chord. Then your first finger is going to come onto the 4th fret A string. Third finger's on the D string 5th fret. So immediately you've got like a D7 shape, but just starting on the bass. And then you want to add your pinky to the 6th fret of the G. Okay. So that's an A7. In fact, I'll just play through the progression once, and so you can hear how they sound in context. I'll also sing some lyrics so you can hear. Well, if you ever plan to motor west, take my way, that's the highway, that's the best. Get your kicks on Route 66. Okay, so that's basically the jazz blues progression, but it's a blues. It's a 12-bar blues, but using some kind of funky chords. So there's your A7. The next chord on the sheet is a D9, not just on the sheet, in the progression. So the great thing is, your fingers are already in that position. All you got to do is keep that formation, move your fingers down, and suddenly you're playing a D7 shape. And if you flatten this finger, you're playing a D9. Okay, so that's the first chord. That's the second chord. And if you can add your pinky, first chord, second chord, just shift it down to, so the D is the root note, which is the 5th fret of the A string. Again, flatten that finger. The reason I prefer to flatten that finger is because then I've got my pinky free to do stuff. Other players, you could use your pinky instead, but so we'll go through the first 4 bars. So the first bar is A7, second bar is D9, then we've got 2 bars of A7. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, D9. 2, 3, 4, A7. 2, 4, A7. Okay, we're going to go to D9 here. D9, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so here you might not get this chord straight away today, but it's definitely one to take away and learn. So I've written in a D sharp diminished. that's a really important chord if you want to start playing some of those out notes that you often hear blues players play, especially the more modern players, like after the 50s. It's not that modern, but the diminished shape, you might know this one already, which is actually the 8th diagram I've put in. It's the D. It's a D shape with a pinky on the top. I'll just show you that slowly. So if you imagine a normal D chord, just use the same formation and start on the 1st fret of the D string. It's a D sharp, because D sharp. Okay, there's the D shape. Add your pinky to the 2nd fret of the top E. It's a D sharp diminished. And again, this shape is movable 3 frets at a time. That's a D sharp diminished. That's also could be called a D sharp diminished. That could be a D sharp diminished. That's a D sharp diminished. They would say that's an inversion, which just means that it's still the same chord, but then the root note is in a different place. So there's your D sharp, yeah? So here, in this chord, there's your D sharp. So it's still a D sharp diminished because same notes, just a different order. Again. There's your D sharp in that one. Well, that's a bit easier. There's your D sharp there on the top string. So D sharp diminished. In the same way, all of the notes are this. Those 4 notes are in the same 4 notes, just in a different order. Same 4 notes, and so on. So that's kind of the first way I ever learned to play a diminished shape. And it's quite easy to get your fingers round because you already know that shape. So it's probably why we always learn that one first. But a really useful way to play the diminished. And it will probably take you days of, if you don't know it already, like any new weird chord, it takes quite a bit of just going from one chord to the next to get it in. So the shape is a really good way to think about it is there's a D minor, okay? So we all know D minor, or hopefully we do, which is, now if you look at the D sharp diminished shape chord diagram, you'll see it's the same pattern, but it just starts with your 2nd finger on the 6th fret of the A string. Okay, so 6th fret of the A, 7th fret of the D, 5th fret of the G. Okay, and then the awkward bit is getting the pinky onto the B string 7th fret. Okay. So yeah, that might take a while to get your fingers under that. Again, it's movable every 3 frets because it's a diminished chord. But to be honest, fretting the chord in this lesson isn't crucial. Because we're looking at phrases and arpeggios over these chords, which are probably a bit easier to play. But nonetheless, I'm just showing you these chords so you can use them. So A7, D9, A7, goes to D9, it goes to the D sharp diminished, it goes to back to an A7, and then if you notice the 8th bar, it goes to an F7, sorry, an F sharp 7. I thought I left it off, but I didn't, it's just small. So there's the F sharp 7, which is the same shape as A7. In fact, it's worth thinking of that. Just think of it as the 7 shape. And depending on where the root note is, dictates the name of the chord. So if we want to play an F sharp 7, then we just take the 7 shape and we make sure that F sharp is in the root. In the same rationale, if we want to play a C sharp 7, C sharp 7, C7, that's a B7. So F sharp 7. Okay. Then after the F sharp 7, which is 2nd fret, is an F. There's an F. There's an F sharp. The next chord is a B minor 7. Yeah. And in kind of blues and more advanced, like jazzier kind of harmony and theory, basically the rule is if you've got a 7 chord, like in this case we've got a B minor 7, if you've got a 7 chord, then you're allowed to play. Oh, sorry, yeah, I'll get to the augmented A in a minute, Ronald. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, I'll talk about that at the end. So what was I saying? Yeah, so with 7 chords, you're allowed to pick any number above the 7, and it sounds fine. It sounds jazzy, but it's acceptable if you want to play jazz. So depending on which note you pick. So for example, we're picking here the 9. It's a B minor 9. Now, the reason I've picked this chord in particular was, again, the thumb. I couldn't play a bar chord. I'm still avoiding it as much as possible until I get the stitches out on Tuesday. But this shape here, that is a B minor 9. It's a really nice chord. You could bar the top 3 strings as well, or you could just play the B string, sorry, the A string. That's kind of muted. Oh no, sorry, it's not muted. It's open. So you're kind of playing those 4 strings. If you wanted to let the top string ring open, you can as well. Again, it sounds kind of spacey, but it's kind of important to start from here, from the A string. Okay, so there's your B minor 9. If you prefer, you could play a B minor 7. Again, sounds nice. If I was playing this, I'd probably mix it up and not know what I was going to play until I kind of got there. And then I'd go, well, B minor 7, B minor 9. Definitely changes the vibe of B minor 9. So you might only play it once or twice in the piece to kind of color the song rather than define the song, if that makes sense. If you were to just play B minor 9 every time, it gives it a minor 9-y feel, which is not my... Yeah, it depends on the song, I guess, but a traditionalist would play a B minor 7 most of the time. But the B minor 9 is worth knowing, especially for soloing, which we'll talk about shortly. Okay, so they're the chords. There's also an E7, which you can play like that. Or in this progression, because we're mainly up here, And then from here, we're playing that B minor 9, yeah? If you can slide these two fingers all the way up to the 7th fret, and then add your first finger to the D string, 6th fret, then you kind of got an E7 there. Okay. And then last of all, there is a turnaround. You could just play 4 bars of A7 and then 4 beats of A7 for bar 11, and then 4 beats of E7 for bar 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, like that, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so another really nice turnaround is you go A, all I'm doing is I'm taking the A7 shape, I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, then you're back to the start. So it's basically 2 beats on each chord. You're on the 5th fret, 1, 2, up to the 8th fret for the on the root. So to C, to B for 2 beats, and the beats are just downstrokes. I'm not really doing many upstrokes at all. B flat, so root 6th fret, and then back to the 5th. So I'll play it all the way through from the top, dead slow. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. A, 2, 3, 4, D9. Back to A7, 2, 3, 4, A7, 2, 3, 4, D9, D sharp diminished. It's where everyone falls off probably. A7, down to F sharp, B minor 9, E7, A, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, I said I'd play it slow, and actually that wasn't very slow at all. But the key to this lesson actually is about lead playing. So I want to move on to that, and actually it should get a little bit easier for people here, because we're just going to learn some phrases. And before I do that, I realized I was talking about the B minor 9, and I was going to say something, and I don't think I covered it. And what I was going to say is, because it's a B minor 7, it says B minor 7, and in this kind of music, any number, when it says a 7, you can basically pick a number above 7. So you could pick 9, you could pick 10, 11, and if you were to play a B minor 7, you could play as a B minor 9. You could play, you could flatten the 9, you could sharpen the 9. You can basically go higher than 9s and try and build a chord. So if you look up jazzy chords and you like the look of one, as long as it's a 7, you're allowed to do it on that chord. And depending on the chord you play, it might sound really modern jazzy, which I'm not personally into, but you might be into it. So you can experiment with that. Anyway, I better move on. So soloing over a blues like this. So you could play the blues scale. But it's worth adding in the arpeggios of chords. And the great thing is, once you learn these arpeggios, if it's a normal blues, so it hasn't got all these jazzy chords in, you can still play these particular arpeggios over a normal blues, and suddenly you sound jazzier, which is how a lot of those blues players play. And you're like, what are they doing? You're like, well, they're playing a slightly jazzy, they're putting in some other chords in their solos that the band aren't playing or the backing track isn't playing. So it sounds a bit out, but it works. So, and this is how they do it. So that first chord is an A7. And if you look at the first little tab that I've written out, you've got the A7 phrase, and it goes, okay. So again, we're playing a finger per fret, and the fingering goes like this. So your first finger's on the top E string, 5th fret, okay? Oh, yeah, I will get to the augmented chord, Ronald, at some point. I'll just go through this for now. So you've got the finger per fret, and we go 5 on the top string, 8 on the B, 5 on the B, and then here we're doing a little kind of, I'll show you the notes and then I'll explain what we're doing. So you go 7, 5, 6, then 5. Sorry, then 7 on the D string. 7, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So what we're doing there, and a dead quick way to explain it, if I stick a capo on the 5th fret, play an E, well, that's an A now, because it's an E with a capo on the 5th fret, suddenly it's an A. So if I play an E7, like that, so your standard E7 shape, so that's an A7 because I'm using a capo on the 5th fret, A7, okay? Notice the notes of that chord. If we just look at the top 4 strings, we've got those notes in the chord. And then this note here, the 7th fret, although it's not in that chord itself, that's an A. So the lick, the little phrase, it's kind of playing the note of that chord. Now, this note here, that's the major third. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The major third, it's the 3rd note in the scale of A major. So that's what dictates whether it's a major chord, an A7, or an A minor 7. This note here means it's a major 7. If we were playing that note, it would be a minor 7. But it's a major 7, a bit happier. So what we do in this phrase, this little arpeggio style phrase, is we're surrounding that note. It's done all the time in slightly jazzier blues playing. Okay. So you could not surround it and you could just play that note as part of an arpeggio. for some reason it feels, it flows easier to do this around, and it sounds pretty cool as well. You could even play that as a hammer-on. It's done all the time. And likewise, we end on the 7, yeah? But instead of playing the 7, why don't we just try playing the 5 instead? That would be quite a nice thing to play over a blues. So you can experiment with it, pick out different notes. And that's kind of how you approach the A7 to get out of the blues scale, because that note isn't in the blues scale. The others actually are. So okay, I've actually recorded in advance a little play along, a little backing track, just the A7 repeated over and over again. 1, 2. So here we go. 4. And again. Try ending on the 7th of the A string rather than the 7th of the D. It sounds like this. Okay. I'm ending on that note, 7th of the A instead of there. I'll do it again. And then go back to the root after if you want. Okay, so that's a nice little kind of exercise you can do just to get your fingers working. And the good thing is there's a lot more to this actually. I'm going to touch on it with the next chord, which is a D9. So we'll look at the D. The next little phrase I've written, okay, I've written 2 for D. I've written a D7, the notes of D7. Now, again, if you were to play an A7 here, hopefully you know that's an A7. Just a simple, it's like an A, but with the middle finger missing. Now, if you were to put a capo on the 5th fret and do the same shape, it's a D, because this note, the root note, is a D now. The A string becomes a D, A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D. So it's an A7 shape, but on the 5th fret, it's a D. Okay. The arpeggio I've played is just that, the notes of that scale, that chord. Just the top 4 strings. 5, 7, 5, 7. Okay. Over the jazz blues, okay, I've got another play along, which is the full chord progression. So the first 4 bars, it goes A7 to D9. Well, it's really a D7, but we play a D9 because it sounds a bit jazzier. So I'm going to just play the A7 arpeggio, then that D7 arpeggio, and see how it sounds.
2, 3.
So A7. You can hear it. D7. Okay. I'll just play that again one more time, and you can have a go at that on your own. I won't play along.
2, 3, 4.
Okay, one more time.
2, 3, 4.
So it's the A, D7, back to A, arpeggio, A7, noodle around the A blues scale or the A arpeggio, D7. Okay, and you're playing the D7 arpeggio. You could also just play the A blues scale at that point as well. They're both fine. Another thing to think, yeah, is there's your A7 arpeggio, right? Okay. If you were to play that up here, starting on a D, just 10th fret is a D, then it's going to sound okay.
2.
I'll play the arpeggio up there. I'm going up, back down. Okay. Now the next shape, the D9 arpeggio. With this, I can kind of show some interesting stuff. There's a D9, and the notes I've just written out 5, 4, 5, 5 on the third tab diagram. And rather than playing them holding the chord and going, it's worth trying to play, keep your fingers off the fretboard, keep your fingers free, okay? Because you're playing lead right now, you're not playing rhythm. So it goes second finger, first finger, second finger, third finger. Okay.
2.
This is the D. This is just the D chord repeated. Again. I'm going to do that D7. So yeah, I kind of mixed between the D7 arpeggio and the D9 arpeggio kind of thing. And just to kind of show that they're both acceptable. If you've got a guitar that doesn't end on the 12th fret like mine ends on the 14th fret, you could also play those shapes as A's. If you think about it, there's your A, yeah? So if you play that D7 arpeggio, but just starting on the 12th fret, 12, 14, 12, 14. That's the A7 arpeggio. There it's a D, there it's an A. Everyone following that? Okay, and you've also, by using that idea of moving the shape, you've got a A9, right? So there's a D9, because that note there is a D. Okay. So if you make sure the root note, if you make the root note an A, that works well. So just to play as an example, I'm going to play the A9 arpeggios over the A chord. I'm going to then go down to D9 for the second bar arpeggio, and then I'm going to do something A7 down here to see how it sounds.
2, 3, 4.
Sorry, it's getting a bit carried away there, but at the end I just noodled around the blues, some bluesy licks. So that's the idea with those shapes. So learn the shapes, they're really useful. And there's something now that if I can get this across to you, it could blow your mind. It's a Louis Armstrong trick that Louis used to do, or Louis kind of, yeah, almost all that he did actually. He had a great knowledge of arpeggios, Louis Armstrong. He knew all his arpeggios. The chord progressions that they used in that early jazzy blues stuff from New Orleans weren't that technical, you know, that they weren't, you know, the modern jazz kind of crazy chord progressions. They were actually quite simple songs. They used some nice chords, 6 chords usually, and 7s, but that was it. It didn't get too out there, which is maybe why I'm into it. And maybe why it was so popular compared to, say, more modern jazz that kind of became less popular to the masses because it's a bit hard to understand. Whereas that early jazz, everyone, you can listen to Ella Fitzgerald in a restaurant and put it on and everyone's happy. But stick on some Miles Davis and people might start walking out. Depends on the restaurant, if you know what I mean. So anyway, what Louis did, I'm going to show you on the D9 here. So I'm just going to get the D9 chord looped here.
2, 3.
D9. This is the arpeggio. What Louis did is he not only would play the arpeggio, but he would also come at it from the note below, like that. So there's the arpeggio, 5, 4, 5, 5. What he would do is he'd go 4, 5, 3, 4, 4, 5, 4, 5. Okay. Or he'd come from the note above. He'd do that. So 6, 5, 5, 4, 6, 5, 6, 5. You can see why Django did so well at it. I'm just using 2 fingers. Or why Django was so into Louis Armstrong. He only had 2 fingers that worked. So. So I'm just going to noodle around that arpeggio. I'm going to go from below. 4, 5, 3, 4, 4, 5, 4, 5. Okay.
2, 3, 4.
Okay. Again, you know, you got all day or all week or actually a lifetime to learn this stuff. So let me just play it through on its own.
2,
I won't play along.
3, 4.
Okay. So another really cool thing you can think of is miss a string. So you go, so play the arpeggio and play from the note below. So you're using that kind of Louis Armstrong idea, but instead of playing it, just go, you know, instead of doing it like that, go 4, 5, miss a string. So go up to the G string and do 4, 5. So then go back. So you have to kind of memorize those arpeggios. Okay. Let's try that. I'll just loop that.
2, 3, 4.
Okay, so that's how you do it, and it'll probably take you a while to get your head around it and really get good at it. But it's also worth remembering you don't just have to come from below; you can come from above. So, just as an example, I'm going to play through the jazz blues backing track that I made, and I'm going to use those approaches. I'm going to play the arpeggios. I'm going to come from the notes below. It's going to sound really jazzy, I'll be honest. And if I was playing a blues, I wouldn't be. I'm going to overdo it basically, so it might be a bit untasteful. But just to explain, because if I was going to use these approaches personally, I'd use them really sparingly. I might only do it once or twice in a solo, and then the rest of the time I'd be playing blues, because it's a blues song and it's just my taste. I'm a bit more into blues than sounding too many out notes. It can put people off a bit. Other people love it, so it's up to you. Here we go.
2, 3, 4.
F7. Okay, so that's basically the idea. I haven't written in arpeggios for F7, but it's the same as A7. Just starts, it's the same pattern, it just starts on the 2nd fret. A nice way into B minor 7 is just to play a B minor. If you know a B minor shape, just play the top 3 notes of B minor. 4, 3, 2. And then E, and then A. So there are 2 things I haven't talked about yet, and I do have time. So we've got the D sharp diminished, and we've also got that A augmented that Ronald reminded me about. So the A augmented, it says A plus. Plus stands for augmented. An A augmented 7, I guess. And the shape is this. Okay. What it does is in its simplest form, it leads you to D9. It adds a lot of tension to take you to D9. So we use the augmented shape. I'll show you the fingering for that. It's 5th fret of the A, 5th fret of the D string, and then 6th fret of the G and 6th fret of the B. Okay. It leads the ear to D9 or D7. So for that reason, we use it before the D9, which in this case is the 4th bar. So A7 in the 4th bar could be an A augmented, which would sound like this: 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. D, 2, 3, 4. A, 2, 3, 4. A augmented. 2, 3, 4. D9. 2, 3, 4. So on. Okay. So that's where we use it, the augmented. And the notes of that, you could think on the top 4 strings, you could go 5, 6, 6, 5. So let's try putting in that little lick, 5, 6, 6, 5 on the 4th bar. And I appreciate this is tricky. This is a head, messing with your head. So you might struggle, but it's definitely a case of going away for some hours on your own, slowly working through each bar and thinking, this is what I'm going to do on the bar. But because we're in a lesson, I'm going to crack on with it anyway. I'm just going to play on the 4th bar. I'm going to remember to play an A augmented kind of shape. Okay, here we go.
2, 3, 4.
Here we go. So that's where you use it. And yeah. By the way, if you're watching this lesson and struggling, you know, next week it's going to be more about the blues scale. It's going to be an easier lesson. But I just wanted to get this one in here now to keep people happy. Certain people have asked about it. So there's your A augmented 7. Okay. Another way to play it is like this. which is you bar the top 4 strings, and then you cover the G and the B with these 2 fingers. So 5, 6, 7, 5. There's a very, very cool thing with this chord I'll talk about. Again, we're getting jazzy here. So if you're a proper blues lover, great, Ron. Very interesting thing about this chord. It could, it could really blow your mind as well. The great thing about this chord is over this chord, they use something called the whole tone scale, which you probably heard mentioned, the whole tone scale. And all that means is it's a scale of whole tones. And a whole tone, this is a whole tone. It's basically 2 frets. Sounds a bit spacey. So the whole tone scale, or like those old Disney films, you can imagine. As they go off up into space or something, So the whole tone scale, you can use that over an augmented chord. Again, it's worth just sitting down for hours, just slowly trying to figure all this stuff out. It's the only way you'll get there. I'm going to play it over the jazz blues in A. And again, some people won't like it. Like Eric Clapton would have turned off ages ago and said, no, there's no way I'm doing that because no one will come and watch me. Mic's off. Are you off? Okay. Yeah, Clapton would, so it's a choice that you make. And I think that Eric Clapton made the choice not to learn this stuff because he knew people would stop coming to his gigs probably, because it's a bit too jazzy for some, but I like it. See you, Ross. Okay, here we go. I'll play the
2, 3,
whole tone scale over the A7. It's a nice note there. Here we go. Okay, so it sounded kind of jazzy. What I did is, I'll show you the pattern I just played. Knowing there's a whole tone scale and knowing that's the shape, all I did is I went 5, 7. There's your arpeggio note there. In fact, just play those notes with 1 finger. So 5, 6, 6, 5. Okay. All you're going to do is, after you play the note, you're going to play a whole tone above, so 2 frets above. So 5, 7, 6, 8, 6, 8, 5, 7. Yeah. There's an awful lot to take in this lesson, so if you remember 20% of it, then brilliant, Okay, so again, because it's the whole tone scale, you're still in the scale if you move up and start from the 7th fret. 7, 8, 8, 7, or is that 9, 10, 10, 9. So you can kind of, if you practice it enough and just get fluid with it, which it's taken me years, I'll admit, but if you do, then you can play some really jazzy sounding out note stuff on the fourth bar of a blues. Here we go. Okay. Again, as I say, this is archived, this lesson, so if you want to just watch it back, then you can. Where in the progression would you, sorry Gary, I'm just seeing your message, but I can't read it all. For some reason, the chat window isn't coming up. I saw you asked a question, Gary, but I can't. Let me see if I can. Ah, there we go. Would you put the A plus chord or the A augmented? It's the fourth bar. You put the A augmented on the fourth bar of the progression to lead you to that D9 on the fifth bar. A, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4. A augmented. I just moved it up 2 frets there, or down, in the way you do with the diminished, whereas it's 3 with diminished. Augmented, it's 2. So there's one last thing I'll touch on and then I'll stop because we've got another lesson, the folk lesson, starting in a few minutes. So the last thing is the diminished run, and I'll show it to you from the fifth, it's a D sharp diminished. This note here is D sharp. Okay. And all we're going to do is we'll go 5, 8. Then you repeat it, but you have to move a fret up. So 5, 8, move a fret up. 7. Sorry, not 5, 8, 5, 9. Sorry, 6, 9, 6, 9, 7, 10. I'm not looking at the sheet, so 8, 11. Just double check I'm telling you what I've written down. Yeah, 6, 9, 7, 10, 8, 11. Because we've got a B string, B string's not the same, you know, it's kind of a little bit of an annoying string as a lead player because it's a semitone lower than the others in the interval. So we have to move up to the 10th. We have to skip a fret there. Okay. That's a nice, in my opinion, that's the easiest arpeggio for D sharp. I'm going to play it through and then I'm going to have to end the lesson and get ready for the next one. But again, as I say, this is all being archived, and of course we can touch more on this anytime really in the coming lessons, so no probs. Okay, so here we go.
2,
Everything we've looked
3,
at. So
4. Go for it.
It's a D9. The D sharp, dim. Back to A7. And then F sharp. So second fret, F sharp. It's a B minor. E7, and then back to E, sorry, back to A. And here you can just play A blues as well. All right, so I'm gonna unmute everyone now, a couple of minutes, and then I'm gonna come out of the lesson, remove spotlight. Now that was probably a bit of a headache for some of you, I don't know, but a nice lesson. If anyone has anything to say, feel free to ask. Hopefully a few of you got something from that.
Yeah, that was good. Makes it ever more complex and interesting. Another 3 or 4 weeks worth of material there for me to go with, but
or years, 3 or 4 years probably, to be honest.
Yeah,
no offense, but it's, for me it was and is. I'm still learning, you know. So
I'm just thinking about sticking with the sort of blues scale and not sort of veering too much off, because we did the blues scale up and down the fretboard, and obviously you can do the A by sort of moving that along. So I'm trying to concentrate on getting that shape all the way up the neck to play the blues scale.
Okay, so next week, yeah, we'll do a blues in A, a 12-bar blues, but we'll do a straight 12-bar blues. So just a normal, none of the F sharps and stuff, just 12-bar blues. And next week's lesson is going to be on the blues scale, completely in A, which is useful. You know, we can move to you could play it in G as well. All you've got to do is move it down 2 frets. But yeah, next week's lesson will be a little bit. Appreciate that was a bit of a more advanced or a jazzier lesson. So I'll do that next week, right? Next.
We used when we did the blues scale before. We did the blues scale all the way from the whole length of the fretboard.
Yeah. You want to do that next week?
We can do that next week, yeah. So you just move it along and make it into an A instead of an E or whatever you can do. But you can just do that. You can just move that shape all the way along anyway, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that's the great thing about the guitar. If you learn the E blues all the way up the neck, move it up a fret, then all the way up the neck, it's the F blues. And move it up another fret, and then it's F sharp. Next fret, it's G all the way up. So, and so on. So, yeah, that's the good thing about the blues.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
I come halfway through this, so I didn't quite understand. I know it went straight over my head here, but it looked like we were talking about soloing over a blues chord. Why use arpeggios rather than the scale that the chord is in?
Well, to make it sound a bit jazzier, which it did, right? It
did, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
In a way. I mean, a lot of the early blues players, and even people like Eric Clapton, players like that who are real traditional blues players when they solo. Like I've heard Clapton trying to play the Autumn Leaves, and it was great, amazing. But a jazz musician would listen to it and go, well, he doesn't know how to play the chords. Because he doesn't, he just plays E minor pentatonic and blues over the whole thing, which sounds great, but and you know, and sold 1 million copies, and then you've got a jazz guitarist who sells 10 copies playing all these crazy chords. So it's not necessarily a bad thing what Clapton's doing, but it as musicians and guitarists, I love it. You know, I'm really into that.
So do you think it's more appropriate to learn the arpeggios rather than the scale if you were? Well, I know you need both. I know you need both.
Yeah, I think first you should learn the blues scale, 100%. And next week we're going to do that. In a way, this week's lesson could have been the 4th week or the 3rd week of the course, but I don't know. Ron, I was chatting to Ronald, and he's quite a more advanced player, I guess, and I know I wanted to give him something to play with now.
Yeah, sure.
So,
I mean, I thought you were. I mean, I came in late. I thought it was a foreign language. Actually.
yeah. Oh, we got some kind of feedback issue there. I don't know. Right. So that's the thing. I mean, they're both really useful, and as I say, use sparingly this thing, then it's okay. Then you can play in a blues band, and people will be like, "Oh, that guy's really good." But if you go over the top with it, then people will say, "Oh, well, yeah, it's a bit jazzy."
Well,
So
yeah.
you put it,
I felt that when you were playing it. I thought, oh, he's bringing a bit of jazz into them blues.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I could hear that.
So yeah, it's up to you which way you want to go with it. Anyway, I better come out of this, and then in a few minutes we're starting the folk one. So got to change my hat.
And see you Tuesday.
Okay, see you on Tuesday.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, see you all. Bye.
I'll see you. I'll send out the link in 5.
Chris, do you want us in Dadgad?
Yeah, got to get into Dad.
Okay, sure.
And also,
Okay.
the chord sheet from the Dadgad workout has the chords on it. So if you can get that sheet from 2 weeks ago, that'll help, because we're in Dadgad.
Yep.
I can't hear you, Mike. You're muted.
Will the chord sheet be on the website?
No, but I'll send it to you now. I'll send it out now. Okay.
Cheers.